The only unanimous thing about this election is that Tilden would catch an ass whooping from Rutherford B. Hayes. You don't fight nobody named Rutherford.
That's
Yo,
automatic loss.
who whooped your ass? Rutherford.
Gentlemen, today we continue our series on corrupt and contested elections. This week we are going back in time to 1876 at what many historians agree is the most highly contested presidential election in United States history. I'm Mike Templer, hanging out with Tim Updegraff, Professor Sky Moss, and this is History Happened. So let's talk about it. It's 1876. President Grant for the past 8 years. That was a presidency defined by a lot of corruption. You're laughing over there, Sky. What's your takes on President Grant's presidency?
Um, yes, a lot of corruption. I think his in-laws are the Dents, D-E-N-T, and he never was offered a horse or a cigar or anything else that he didn't accept. Neither did they. So, yeah, for sure on that. Grant's complicated in ways, but that 15th Amendment, the vote to black men, only came because Grant won by 300,000 votes, I think, against like Horatio Seymour, I believe. But that's the only reason that came about because the Republicans are like, man, we should be winning.
Yeah, and there's thoughts that Grant's going to run for a third term. He's a very popular individual to maybe half of the country, not popular everywhere.
Yeah. I read a piece once that Mark Twain roasted him. They had a U.S. Grant roast, and Mark Twain hosted that shit and roasted him. And he
Wow.
thought Grant was gonna kill him, but at the end he came to him and was like, "That was actually pretty funny." Or he actually laughed. I don't know. I think he's exhausted his political currency by that point. I mean, politically, nobody was really a Grant fan. He just was a war hero. He didn't have Jackson's personality. So I think that's why you see a guy like, again, Horatio Seymour nearly beat him. Grant's not that charismatic or popular across the country.
It seems like the Republican primary, there was Rutherford B. Hayes. There was also James Blaine of Maine.
But Hayes is from Ohio. If you have nothing going for you politically in life, be born in Ohio. It'll help your chances for sure. So there's this real compelling feeling of Reconstruction is about awarding black people, shit's going downhill. I mean, you got this like conglomeration of anti-Reconstructionists, like the Redeemers in the South, they call themselves. They called themselves the Redeemers. And 1866, Nathan Bedford Forrest breaks out that Ku Klux Klan like 10 years before this election for a reason.
We have Rutherford B. Hayes winning the Republican nomination, like you said, from Ohio. But the more interesting thing to me is we had Samuel J. Tilden become the nominee for the Democratic Party, and he's from New York. I find that to be very interesting. New York Democrat. What's up with that?
I'm pretty sure that's just what I spoke to. You got this like bifurcation of racism after the war. And so there's a Democrat. You associate the Democratic Party with Nathan Bedford Forrest and the Klan, and you should because they're the same thing. But now you have New Yorkers who are Democrats and openly, applauding the idea of end Reconstruction, push it back to how it was. This is nothing I support. And again, that election that Grant wins is so close because across the country, there's consternation around the idea of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. It's not that celebrated a concept, right? So
Right.
1865, 7, and 1870, 6 years before this election, there's a lot of people not comfortable with that. And that's what Tilden is. And Tilden's up. I'm not trying to get too far forward. Tilden's a popular candidate.
Was it
And
easier for a Northerner to sell the end of Reconstruction than maybe it would have been for a Southerner to push it to Northerners?
oh, Fuck yes. I mean, I believe. Down south, they got what's called scalawags and carpetbaggers, right?
Yep.
A carpetbagger was a northerner that came down there and tried to profiteer off of the remnants of the South. Scalawag was a southerner who was always there that saw an opportunity and tried to take advantage of it. They were worse than carpetbaggers, right? But but there are a lot of scalawags ready to join the Republicans, and there's a lot of New Yorkers ready to join the Democrats.
Obviously, about any of these opinions or any of these thoughts, there's nothing unanimous about this election.
No, I mean that's a great phrase. Honestly, Michael, there's nothing unanimous about this election. It's all a push.
The whole world is pretty much subject to this same sort of divide and kill colonialism mentality. To take a look at what's going around the world, Europe is doing what they called the scramble for Africa, where they're starting the groundwork of laying out, cutting, and breaking off Africa
Right?
into their own properties,
Yeah,
setting up borders that have nothing to do with geography or culture or religions,
yeah.
just setting them up in their own little meeting on how they're going to break that up, which is part of the reason why Africa is the way it is today.
Yeah, that's the Berlin Conference, 1864, 1865, run
Yep.
by Otto von Bismarck in the Second Reich. USA was there. We didn't pull anything out of there, but we already had Liberia. But you're right. The rest of them just carved that whole continent up. You can fit three and a half lower 48s inside the continent of Africa. They just carved that whole thing up and do with it, what they see fit going forward. But yeah, it's you're right about like when I teach this era in class, this is like the rise of the empire. I kind of always play that Star Wars music. Like if you don't have an empire moving forward, so the Spanish American War comes in here, like when we get the Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico, etc. Like if you don't have an empire by 1900, you losing.
Excellent point.
Proverbial land grab of sorts, just a claim grab, really, where
Yes, yes. I mean,
all
the fact that Leopold can claim the Congo as a corrupt monarch. And then, I mean, he's so murderous. His own country takes it away from him.
So back to the United States, we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each of the candidates. Out of the Republican team from Ohio, Governor Rutherford B. Hayes, VP William A. Wheeler, Congressman from New York. Rutherford B. Hayes, kind of also known as a resident badass, wounded 5 times in the Civil War for the Union side.
Yeah, I feel like Republican candidates during what's called the era of forgotten presidents, I'm gonna say like they're all war veterans, starting with Grant. I feel like many of them are Union veterans, the
Yep.
presidential candidates they run on that side. Yeah.
Plus, you got to have a gnarly beard. After Lincoln, could you even be a president without having a beard?
I was looking at pictures of Horace Greeley today. He got one of them funny ass cuts and beards, though, son. He ain't got the big beard. He got like the drop off, and then it's kind of naked down there.
Also, just throwing this candidate out there in terms of also specifically beard facts is Peter Cooper, the the candidate for the Greenback Party. He had one of those right across the almost like a chin strap that stuck out all the way around. A lot of really exciting, fun new beards in presidential elections here in the 18th.
Yeah,
Rutherford B. Hayes running on the to eliminate the spoil system. The spoil system was a huge problem with Grant's entire presidency, where they essentially gave political jobs, government jobs to their buddies, their cronies, anyone that kind of helped them out along the way as a favor. And Hayes was running to eliminate that system.
that sounds good. Um, I'm not so sure that's how it materialized, but I mean, think about it. He cuts the ultimate spoils to get into the Oval Office.
Yeah, and it's funny because he also had to cut a deal with Blaine from Maine to even get the nomination to begin with. So it's just nothing but a trail of horse shit.
But he's from Ohio. I'm telling you. Yeah.
Democratic
Nominee.
nominee Samuel J. Tilden, VP Thomas Hendricks, Indiana governor. Lots of governors. Samuel Tilden's a governor, graduate from Yale, ran under an anti-corruption ticket. They must have really thought that they kind of had that in the bag with the anti-corruption. Grant was nothing but corruption. So how could the Republicans win again? Samuel Tilden had total distance where he could be like, it's the Republican Party is doing this. You got to give us a chance.
Yep.
We're not your grandpa's Democrats. We're not all from Louisiana. I'm from New York.
Yeah, that's horrible and honest. I feel like if they're both running on the idea that it's corruption out here, graft going on, they're right because this is the era where there's no income tax. It's all a tariff system. Everybody's scraping. But the fact is that Hayes and the Republicans have gotten fat off of winning the war. Like they won the war, they ran who they wanted to run, they controlled the budgets. If you're a Confederate, I'm not going to say a former Confederate because there's no such thing. If you're a Confederate sitting in Congress and you watching them spend all that money in the direction of union ideas, union league, etc., you're going to say it's corruption. It's corruption, corruption.
Hmm.
But it's ultimately about, again, the sectionalism that is still in your mouth. You still got that taste in your mouth. But yeah, he's linked with some interesting Southern racist intellectual circles
I
for
mean, you
sure.
have to be right. You're the Democratic nominee in
Yes.
1876.
And you're getting mad support from you're getting mad support from all over. Right? You're a New Yorker and we chose you. Like we really think you're representing our Southern, antebellum ideas.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those two gentlemen are going to go at it for the presidency. But first, we must ask ourselves the most important question you could ask yourself when choosing a ruler is who would win in a fight between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel J. Tilden.
Hmm.
Now, I'm going to throw off the stats and I'm going to ask you guys what you think. Rutherford B. Hayes, 5 foot 10 inches, around 160 to 170 pounds. Tilden, 5 foot 8 inches, so shorter by 2 inches, and is estimated to be about 150 pounds. So he was coming in short and he was coming in light. Tilden was, not to get Sky all mad about this, but Tilden, we all seen the Tyson fight. Age makes a difference. We got
Why
six,
Sky? Why would I be mad about
because
this?
you yelled at me last time. You called me ageist.
You're an ageist. Yeah, keep going.
Samuel Tilden is 62 years old and Rutherford B. Hayes is 54. In terms of general health, Rutherford B. Hayes got a couple injuries from the war, but is known to keep himself in real good condition. Active war hero, multi-time veteran, multi-time injury. And Tilden, he was experienced some health issues leading up to the election. Had a severe health crisis in 1871. He suffered from gout, which affected his mobility. So the odds are looking pretty stacked. But what are you guys thinking? Who's gonna win, Hayes or Tilden?
I'm all for Hayes.
Oh, completely haze. Completely haze. And those bouts of gout, Kim Jong-un be getting gout from cheese. Too much cheese. Definitely haze. Not even a question, man. Seriously? He's from Ohio too. Come on. You ever fought someone from Ohio?
Wilderness,
They're
Ohio,
pretty
too.
tough.
They're naturally angry.
They're tough people.
The only unanimous thing about this election is that Tilden would catch an ass whooping from Rutherford B. Hayes. You don't fight nobody named Rutherford.
That's
Yo,
automatic loss.
who whooped your ass? Rutherford.
So we clearly know who would have won that fight. However, that brings us to the election results. And the winner of the 1876 election. Oh, fuck. So this is more of a timeline thing than a clear-cut winner. To go through the timeline, it seemed that at the end of the evening, on night one, it appeared that Tilden would win. He was at 184 electoral votes. All you need is 185 to win it. There's 20 electoral votes in dispute overnight: Florida, Louisiana, Oregon, and South Carolina. And then all hell breaks loose because both sides accuse each other of cheating and lying and intimidation and villainous acts. What's going on in Florida, Louisiana, Oregon, and South Carolina, guys?
I don't know. I guess you're trying to definitely control the polls. And this is the era where, frankly, you're going to see, you got to chase black men away from the polls. I mean, if you're confident they're going to vote Republican because the Republicans registered every black person, every black man in the South they could, then your job is to not let them get near the polls, man.
Exactly.
I mean, if that's too dark of a view on it, but there's definitely a lot of violence, intimidation, and shit going on. By the time you get to 1900, like most black folks is done voting. They publish your name in the paper up till like the turn of the century when you vote. Like you can read who voted.
When did voting become private in terms of who you're voting for?
I think it's called the Austrian ballot. Maybe Tim can Google it real quick. But I feel like it's towards 1900. Like in this era, it's in this era, I believe. So yeah, I mean, it was like signing the Declaration of Independence. That's a choice. That's a decision because once people read your name and they got some grievance with you.
The first states to introduce it was 1856.
Yeah, what an interesting thing that, say, before the 1900s, as a nation, you didn't just vote in private. You had to proclaim who you were voting for. And like you said, fuck the consequences. Because if you're in the South and you're voting for Lincoln, who wasn't even on your ballot, probably, there's going to be a real problem.
When I was growing up, and most of my life, most black folks is Democrats. But my older black uncles, a couple of them, they Republicans. They were and still are till their death. You know why? Because Lincoln was a Republican.
Absolutely.
So 1884 was the individual states moved to secret ballot soon. And in 1891, Kentucky was the last state to do it.
Right in the South. No shit.
Yep. Yep. Whole decision when you go to the polls.
They don't know who has won. They're going to set up an electoral commission. There's going to be 5 U.S. representatives, 5 senators, and 5 justices. And there's going to be 1 independent, and he is supposedly going to decide the whole fucking election.
Kingmaker.
And the Democrats found a way to give him a seat in Congress to help persuade him vote for Tilden. And then at the end, he decides he doesn't want to be involved, and it goes to Joseph Bradley, who gets to make the decision for everybody and determine who the next president of the United States will be. So regardless of what anyone says, I imagine at this point, we're going to do whatever we can do to avoid a fucking Civil War too.
Yes.
And then it's the room where it happens. It's closed door shit. Like they're talking back there about they want the troops out of the South. The South's like, we don't, because they're actually Union troops stationed in the South, right? The Reconstruction Act is like 5 military districts, actual troops in the South. They're like, we get out of here.
It's an occupation.
Yeah, it is. To them, it is.
For
To
sure.
them, it is. To the north, it's preserving a union and an idea, but to the south, it's a total occupation force. And so they're willing to capitulate around the White House for bigger things, which is let us get our Jim Crow shit on and get the fuck up out of here so we can get back to what we was doing. We'll give you the White House right now. And the other two things they wanted, one of which they got, was the postmaster general position, which is crazy. And my wife made this great point this morning. It's almost like controlling the internet at that point. So
Mm.
they're really insistent on they want that, and they want a transcontinental railroad to go through the South, through Texas, to be exact. In 1869, when the Transcontinental Railroad was finished, it was determined when the war started where it would go, and purposely fuck the South. And so they were bent about that too. Like they that was part of the negotiation. We want a transcontinental railroad to the South. They didn't get that.
And what was left was Joseph Bradley winning it for the Republicans.
And he was
Yeah.
also nominated by Grant on the Supreme Court.
So this election's not going to have good ramifications really for anybody. They're going to end Reconstruction. All of the safety that Black people had down south is going to be completely gone. Any sort of thought process of civil rights is going to be gone for another 100 years. It's going to set the whole country and everybody just back. Nothing unanimous and nothing good about the 1876 presidential election. Now, I'm hoping, guys, can we get some silver lining?
I call it the apartheid era, and it's hardcore in the South, man. It's hardcore. Um, so yeah, I remember going down first time I went down there with my dad to Georgia, where he grew up, and seeing how different it was. I was like 23, 24, full of brim and upstate New York vigor. It's different down there, man. Definitely is. Definitely is. But silver lining in this election, I got some. The fact that it was completely corrupt, controversial, probably illegal, and still no war occurred. Like they figured it out and moved forward, right? There's going to be another election in 4 more years. We'll keep it moving. I don't know. There's been elections so close that it was controversial, but we moved on. And that's what the loyal opposition and, peaceful turnover of power is about, man.
Exactly.